Hello everybody, it's me, and welcome back to the video. Now, in this video, I am going to be teaching you guys, or kind of showing you guys, a lot of extremely useful PvP tips if you want to get into it, and actually how to get into PvP. I've been doing PvP in Doodle World for quite a while, and for most people that watch me, they already have an idea on what to do. I really wanted to go through the eyes are scaring me. I really wanted to go through my thought process when I go to make basically anything and how you can get started to do things exactly like I do. So let's get into it. Now, the very first thing you're going to need if you're going to prepare to PvP is you're going to need equipment, a team, and your tasks done, basically. And you're going to need to know what is good. So, for example, you're going to want to build your team before you can kind of prepare. So what you do when you're kind of building a team is think about what you want the team to be based around. First off, I based it around Springling because, you know, Springling is literally my iconic creator skin, so I thought, let me just base it around Springling. And then you're going to need to know what moves to use, and then you're going to need to have equipments, which equipments are extremely important. We're going to get into that later. But when you're going to make a team, the first thing you want to do is figure out some cool things you can do with Springling, or the thing you're making. For one, I wanted to have slow pivots that I could add in with Springling, so then it could just deal consistent damage. So I decided to add Owl, which Owl is a very, very bulky hit and run user who can also threaten metal types, and it can also use toxic, which is super important to wear things down in the long run. It can also heal back up, so that is super duper good. And with this, you would want to run a very, very, very defensive move set. You could also go for like a pizza slice, which I prefer that. But this just makes it super bulky and really nice to be able to hit and run. The issue here with these two is that they share a common weakness. Two of them actually, being ice and toxic. So I decided, you know what? I'll add Malzuri, which Malzuri has the water crystal typing, so it's able to beat ice and it's able to beat toxic types. So it's good in that reason. Now here you can also use, I have Crystal Wall, Gem Blast, Crystal Wall, Rust, Gem Blast, and Wave Shot. Basically, with Wave Shot, I'm able to get rid of toxic spikes on the field and be able to beat down acid rain teams, which is really nice. And on this specific team, you could probably sub in Kill Intel if you really wanted to, but I wanted to give Malzuri a try because I think it's really nice and it's very, very bulky and good at shaving off a lot of scary threats. And it puts up really nice support with Crystal Wall, so that was really good. And then of course this one is also kind of a defensive move set. The team I made was very defensive. It's kind of like semi-stall, like Springling semi-stall, but overall it's very nice and bulky. And the second thing I decided to add was another water type, being Abyssant. So this was another toxic weak thing I had, which there's like a few toxic weaknesses on this team. But whenever you are building a team, there are going to be flaws with it. There can't be a singular perfect team. And of course with this, I'm going with like a bulky attacker with his like Icy Bite, Flashing Strike, Fin Slash, and Rip Current. You know, very basic. And here, it's more pretty basic things. You can sub out Ornate Necklace for Swag Juice if you really wanted to. And Decorative Katana, I feel like if you wanted to go more bulky, you could use a Pizza Slice, but that's whatever. And this is mainly here so we can deal with Incinelisc and stuff. So that's very good for it. And then we also have Voltatu, which I decided to add in, which is another toxic weakness, but it allows me to easily pivot and other pivots because of my ability and the item, which we're going to get into items later. It is a defensive Voltatu, which you don't really have to use a defensive Voltatu. You can use an offensive one, but on this specific team, I thought defensive would be a bit better because I'm not exactly trying to go for damage on Voltatu. But it can still do very good damage if it needs to, and it can also switch in on, let's say, Lingering Poison and get a really nice shock therapies up, which honestly is kind of okay. It also has Shifting Winds to get rid of hazards, such as Entangling Vines. And then you can Shockwave, and then Hit and Run is just for pivots, should always be used on Voltatu Hit and Run. And then here another pretty bulky one, you're just trying to be bulky. With a lot of this team is very bulky. Then the last thing I decided to add was a Magmatoad. Now this is also an instance where you could add a Clangatang to really help versus your toxic weakness, but I really liked Magmatoad for how bulky it is, and it's able to shatter and break magical shields and crystal walls. It's also able to spread around extremely consistent burns. So let's say if Springling ended up dying, the rest of the team can still function pretty well without the main damage dealer being dead, you know? Like, you can throw out super strong burns, and it's just really nice in that instance. And also Abyssint helps this team with, like, without dying to Koryu, right? Because this team is extremely weak to Koryu and is very toxic weak. So every team you make is always going to have a specific weakness that you're going to have to figure out how to play around, and that's how you can understand your team. Which can actually move us into our next section, which can be talking about equipments. Now, I just showed you guys all the equipments, and equipments are extremely important. You want to use equipments exactly how they're described, like a 16 attack, 7 attack, 20 speed. You want to use them to your advantage. Now here with Springling, it's very clear if you look at its ability and its stats, it is a kind of quick, very strong melee attacker. With its ability Hidden Strength, it gets its attack to insane levels. 182 attack is nothing to scoff at. It's so strong. Along with incredibly strong stab here with Leaf Blade, it's gonna be able to 2-hit KO a lot of the game. It does like 25% to Junipyro, which I thought was crazy when it first happened to me, but it might have just been a random Junipyro. And what we're talking about equipments here, basically you're trying to go for all-out damage on Springling. You just want to go Smoldering Hood, Ruby Pendant, Amber Trap Fly. You just want to be as fast as possible and do as much damage as possible. This is also an instance where you could replace Smoldering Hood and get Candy Headphones, which you get like literally 1 HP, but you get way more speed, which can come in like a lot. It can be very handy if you're fighting stuff like Jineko, which I don't think you can outspeed Jineko if you do that, because most Jinekos run max speed, so it's more useful to run Smoldering Hood because you get a slight bit of bulk back. Like, would you rather, like, do you really want to lose like 40% of your health? Like, I don't really think so. You know, I just think that's kind of dumb. And so with Springling, you just want to be like very bulky and just not bulky, sorry, do very high amounts of damage, and it's able to do that, and it's really good in that regard. And with Owl, you're just trying to be bulky so you can get free pivots to actually help Springling be able to do damage, because the more time Springling gets on the field, the more damage is going to be thrown out basically for free. So the same thing with Malzuri, it's bulky and it's able to support using Wave Shot, and it's able to rack up damage with Gem Blast, and it's really nice. And it can also Crystal Wall to help things get in easier. And Abyssint is a bulky strong attacker, able to check things like Incineroar and Koryu, which is really nice because those things are terrifying. And Abyssint is a very good defensive part of this team, and that's gonna be interesting when we get to items. Now, same thing with Zapdos or Volta-2. It's a bulky pivot that's able, it kind of does the same thing that Owl does, but it also helps versus Zapowera, which is kind of where you're weak on this team. You're weak to toxic types and Zapowera on this team. Although you have an immunity and a resist, if those two go down, it's pretty much over. But if you fought something like a Mold, that's going to be where this team can very much struggle to take down, because Mold can beat stuff like Magmatoad. So if you were to use this exact team, stuff like Mold and like any toxic type can do a lot of work. Stuff like Core Lizard could be scary if it's Climate Shot under a Rain team, just completely annihilates Magmatoad, and Psycho Force just stops Malzuri. God, dude, I keep yawning. It's not fun. But yeah, you have to be worried about your weaknesses. And listen, it is okay to have weaknesses on teams. You don't need to have a team that checks literally everything. Use what you want. And I wanted to use something like this. So it doesn't really matter if I am weak to specific things, because I can play around them. There is playing around to things. Like, let's say Mold is getting like too comfortable, like just clicking the green arrow, right? You can go into like Zapdos on a Rust or something and just threaten it out with Shockwave, you know? There's a lot of instances where you can play around that stuff, and it's a little scary, you know? You just have to be careful. But your teams can be weak to things, and it doesn't really matter as long as you're happy with it, and it can perform well. And next, we're going to be talking about held items. Now, items are extremely important. Now, you might think, oh, they just give you like a little bit of damage boost, a little bit of healing. Items are extremely important in anything. Let's say you have a food taffy. I don't really know who that's going to help with. Actually, let's go, for example, air taffy on Owl, right? Let's say you were going to hit and run with an air taffy and get like a lot of damage that can help later in the game. Like, items are so helpful in that regard, and what you need to know is what items to put on what. So let's start with Springling. One of these items here is something that Springling can always use super effectively, and one I would say to use is definitely a Lethal Ornament. Lethal Ornament is such a good item on Springling because it will boost Springling's damage output. It basically boosts Springling's damage to 130% stronger moves, which is insane. It gets so powerful. Like, think about this. If Hidden Strength just boosts, like, doubled your damage or your base power on your moves, it's kind of, I think, the same. If how damage works in this game, if I'm correct, basically, let's say that this was 180 base power, right? That'd kind of be what Hidden Strength would do if it didn't double your attack stat. If I had 91 and this was 180, I think it would do the same amount of damage. If not, then ignore this entire part. But Lethal Ornament's able to boost your damage, which is really good, and you take a little bit of damage in return, but you usually get one-shot by anything that's not very effective move. Even neutral hits can one-shot Springling, so you need to be very careful with how you play Springling. But in general, I think this is a very solid item. You can also run Determination Jelly with Entangling Vines if you wanted to go something with like a Suicide Lead just to get them up and keep them up with your offensive pressure, which is really, really helpful. And with our next item, we can go to Owl, which any item, and there's one item here, and I will say it is use Crayons. Crayons on Owl is really, really solid because it gives you so much more longevity than you think. You might think, oh, it's just crayons, you know, longevity. Now, it helps so much because if you look at its ability, when this Doodle enters the battle, it takes 25% damage until it uses the move. Basically, you switch in, take 25% less damage, and you heal that up. And then you can hit and run, and then get your Guardian back. You can heal, and then like poison. You can do a lot with use crayons. It just helps you stay alive for a lot longer. And then here with Voltatu, you can use Spiky Thorns, which it will prevent things from pivoting off of you, such as Grufflin, Fragale, and at some points Scorporuli, but those are very scary because those can do a lot of damage to you if it is under Chocolate Rain. And what's nice about Spiky Thorns is since you're an electric type, if you switch in on air types that go for hit and run, you can also have a 30% chance to get them electrocuted because of your ability, and you also resist air type moves, which is super helpful, and you're basically a way to just beat any air type that exists and also pivot off of them. And since you're more bulky, you are going to be able to underspeed most pivoters in the game if they're running a speedy set, which I think most pivoters do. This is one of the few instances where, like, outside of Owl and like Voltatu, they can be slow enough to, or more of a point where things will outspeed them and they can pivot last. Because if you're ever in a situation where it's, let's say Grufflin v Grufflin, you're gonna want to be the Grufflin that pivots second because you want to have the advantage. If you pivot first, you're giving the opponent the advantage. You know, they're gonna take a little bit of damage on their pivoter, that's fine. But if they get the advantage on turn one, that can be detrimental to you and it take you a lot of work to get back up to. And with our next item, we can actually go with the Wake Up Jelly for Magneto. This one's pretty self-explanatory. It has the move Rest, and it's basically just an instant heal all the way back up to max health, which is super helpful when you want to stay alive. And if you're as bulky as Magneto, you can just survive any hit that's not quad effective and then just heal it up. And that's really, really nice and super helpful. And here with Malzuri, we can go with something as a Heal Jelly. Now, you guys definitely know what's coming here. Heal Jelly Malzuri with Jelly Lover. This duel has a 50% chance to create another jelly after they consume one. It is super duper helpful in that regard, and it's able to just heal up. Just heal. Now, if you get it to half health, it will heal. and then it'll create another jelly, heal. It's able to stay alive super consistently throughout a game, along with Crystal Wall. If you ran a magically defensive set, it's just super hard to break down, and it's honestly a pretty solid defensive typing, but it really sucks offensively because it's walled by like any water type that exists. So you need to be worried about that. If you're running like a toxic rain team with a climate shot, then it could probably perform well. And the last item here, you could run Champion Belt on Abyssant. This just boosts its overall damage just by a little bit. It's not that much, but it's able to do quite a bit to help. And you can also pick up surprise KOs with like Rip Current. And if you wanted to, you could like replace, let's say, use crayons. If you want to use a more bulky Abyssant, you can replace use crayons and use like freaking, I don't know, like TV dinner owl to get guaranteed slow pivots. But in ways like that could probably not work out. But those are how items can work. Just make sure you put items like, don't put like a taffy on a pivoter, right? You're gonna, that's like taffy's one time. If you're gonna use a taffy, it's gotta be used on something that's gonna do a ginormous hit that will basically guarantee you a KO. Like let's say plant taffy, Springling, for example. It's gonna be able to do a lot of damage. But in instances, taffies are not the best. Let's say you're using like a Pursuit Henchum and using like a dark taffy, but instead of a Cursed Cloak, you could use that if you really want to just catch something and kill it immediately. That can be helpful, but honestly, stop using taffies on things that like pivoters. Just stop. It's not a good idea. And this next part's going to hop into how exactly your team is going to function. You need to understand what your team is going to be doing and what all of their roles are. For one, Springling is the main damage dealer of this team. I'm going to try to go a little quicker because I don't want this to take forever. Springling is the quick damage dealer of the team. Owl is, of course, the slow pivoter that's able to heal off consistently, throw out poisons. This is just to anti-pivot and paralyze things and also get rid of Tingling Vines. Magmatoad is here so you can basically beat anything that's called like any plant types, and it's very good at being able to I forget what does it check? Mostly plant types, able to beat plant types and help a lot versus metal types. And then Malzuri is also helpful versus metals, but it also is here so you can beat toxic types and ice types, which are terrifying. And then Abyssant's also here so you can stop fire types and, fun fact, dark types because it has the bright lights ability. So you need to know that this is an attacker, pivoter, bulky wall in a way, sustainer, and just a bulky damage dealer. You need to know that because if you don't know your team's roles, you can die super easily. If you just go into a battle like, oh, these guys will just deal damage, and you're using something like an owl, you're not going to be happy with how much damage it's actually doing. So you need to know how your team is going to function, and you need to know their weaknesses. As I was saying in the beginning, I said that this team is very weak to toxic, which it is. I feel like this was a good example to show you that teams can be weak to things, and that is okay, as long as they play to how you know how to play. I can play around toxic types with Magmatoad and like Malzuri, right? I can do that, but would that exactly like be bad? That'd be bad because toxic is not the most common typing, to be honest. There's like two good toxic types, being like Metacrow, and I think there's one more that I'm forgetting, Girocera. And those are very threatening. If any toxic types can hit Malzuri for super effective, it's very scary. So you need to be wary of things like that, and you need to analyze your team, make sure it's not going to be weak too much. And also, like, things like Zapoera you're pretty scared against, although you do have Magmatoad. A Zapoera can just helicopter kick, get you low, have you waste your wake up jelly, even disarm your wake up jelly so you can't play the game, and then you're forced to like go dis on a helicopter kick, which would really suck because if they're Riot Shield, you can't really play the game. And since you don't really have any disarms yourself, and you don't really have a disarm switch in on this specific example of a team, that can be pretty scary because you can't get rid of items. Or you could run like a disarm Springling over like ambush, which I might end up doing because ambush sucks. And for this next part, that's gonna be a very, very short segment. Use 6 stars whenever possible. You have to use a 6-star. You might be like, oh, I can just use a 5-star and speed token it. You, at level 100, 1 star gives you 5 extra stats. So you're losing out on 5 of every one of your stats at level 100. And you have no idea how strong that is. Speed tokens are good if you're using like roulette exclusives that can't exactly be 6-star just yet, and they're helpful for like showcases, for example. But if you don't have 6 stars that can be 6-starable, you're doing something wrong. You need to take the time and effort to go out and prepare to get it, you know? Go get the 6 stars if you can. Don't use a 5-star if it's 6-starable. You shouldn't. Like if it's a roulette exclusive that can be 6-starable, like Xenoxus, for example, that's fine, but you need to use 6 stars whenever possible. They're more helpful than you realize. They're way more helpful than you realize. So this guy's been following me around literally the whole showcase, or not showcase, the video. So I decided I might as well show you the next part of this segment. This is going to be the battling part, and I'm going to be explaining exactly like how to go throughout a whole battle. I explained how you prepare and get ready for PvP. Why not show you a battle in like immediately? So basically, what you want to do here at the team preview is analyze your opponent's weakness. Now here, my opponent's weakness is basically light types. I could see light types doing good damage. Magmatoad can put in a lot of work against this team because nothing can really beat Magmatoad. Literally the only thing here that can beat Magmatoad consistently is going to be Gomut. So what I'm going to want to do is try my best to eliminate Gomut early, and that's going to be my best option. So after we built the team and we are all ready with our equipment and items, let's go ahead and try it out. Let's go with the lead of Owl because that is what our slow pivoter is supposed to be. Now, in this instance, I had the wrong lead, right? So what I'm going to want to do is this thing is obviously going to go for a shockwave or something. Or I could go for a prediction to where he could go for Psycho Force on my, let's say, hit and run, right? In this instance, I don't have to predict. As you can see, it's literally turn 1. I can take the damage on Magmatoad because he has no way of beating it. He has no earth resist. I can always throw out a shatter and just get free damage. So I can literally always go Magmatoad without any issue. Every single time. So this is a bit more interesting because this tells me that it's totally going to be Climate Shot. So I need to be worried about that specifically. What I'm going to do is I have to go Malzuri here because if it is, I need to scout for the Climate Shot, right? I need to. So yeah, as you can see there, it was Climate Shot. This is also where Psycho Force can come out. And this is where we might have to lose one of our Doodles. Unfortunately, this Volt Enchant is terrifying for us to go up against for the first battle. Or literally just the battle we're doing. So the early game is where you have to get prepared and learn what your opponent is using. Mid game, take advantage of it. Late game, have something in the back that's ready to win. Magmatoad is able to win, and I need to be able to play that correctly. So I need to be ready to use it whenever. And my Springling can also do some incredible damage. Like, it can do like 30% to Incineroar, which is insane to me. I actually outspeed the Volt Enchant, which I find is kind of crazy, as I go for an Electro Slash. So this is definitely a slower Volt Enchant. Now here I could actually create a Jelly here if I win the 50-50, which unfortunately I don't. And that doesn't, it is unfortunate that happened. So I can, but since I outsped the Volt Enchant, I can easily go for another Gem Blast and just take it out. They can also go into something like, okay, they go into Stalagant, which actually takes 50%, which is really good for me. I do end up creating another Jelly, which is really nice. Now, what we can see here is that our team doesn't really have a Mind Resist, so we need to be worried about that. What I can do is, since this is a melee attacker, I have a melee wall here, or something that can beat melee attackers being a Zapdos, but I have to be worried about it going for the Crystal Cut, because I am weak to that. What my safest option here to do is to go Owl. Now, when I go Owl here, I'm going to be able to take this attack super well. Right? See how I almost take no damage with Owl. Then, I can go for an entirely free hit and run, and that's really good. And I don't really have to predict anything right now, because I'm not in a position where I need to. So I can go for a free hit and run, and pivoting is super important and crucial in any battle. And notice how, even if he switches out or goes for a move, I'm going to underspeed him, and I'm going to get my pivot. And what I can do, for example, is go into, well, since he went for that, pretty sure Springling can still take it out. My initial plan was to go into Springling and go for an Iron Slash and take it out. I think that can still work. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that because I kind of need to, you know? I could also go into like Magmatoad, for example. Oh, this better take it out. This better take it out. That I was gonna get into true power range, then I'm just gonna lose. I don't really want to lose Springling immediately because I do need it for Gomut. It's at +2. Let's see. I'm curious. I think Springling still takes it out regardless of his +2. So yeah, it still does. Because that's how strong Lethal Ornament is. I actually want to run a calc. Later, I'll learn what he was using and I'll use the calc for there. So right now we took out Stalagant, which wasn't exactly threatening Magmatoad. Now, this thing is interesting because I know it's going to go for a Fireball, right? And I have Incineroar, which is this thing's full wall, so I can always go into it without being worried. So at this point, yeah, I also did get burned immediately, which really sucks for me. That really sucks because now I have to use other methods to take this thing out. Yeah, that really sucks. I'm going to go for a Fin Slash because he has almost no water resist. Only one he has is Gomut. So we could have also used Abyssant as our win condition because it's able to just hit the whole team, not super effectively, but really hard, right? And Gomut can't really take 2 hits. So this is pretty solid. I can go for a very nice Fin Slash. And they are forced to go Gomut here because they have no switches into this. Okay, now I can't exactly sack this thing immediately. But in this instance, I could, you know? Because if you look at the team, if I get Gomut one shot and I kill it, I win immediately with Magmatoad. So honestly, I can kill Abyssant without worrying about Gomut winning, right? And luckily, I lived the crit, which I think is hilarious. I am going to end up going down there, but that opens it up. Because I am still now very weak to the Incineroar now, but that doesn't really matter as long as I can win with my Magmatoad. I'm going to go for the Quick Strike here because it has Rip Current and I don't want to take that damage. So I can just go for an entirely free Quick Strike here, which just will take it out every single time, and there's no reason to keep that Gomut around because it will die regardless. So, Springling has gotten 2 KOs so far, which is really good. This team was based around Springling, so we're able to do a lot of damage with it. And I'm very happy about that, as they go right back into Incineroar. Now, this is where I can play Magmatoad. Now, Magmatoad right now is the perfect play, because he has almost no way of beating it. Since I am a magically defensive Magmatoad, I'm able to I can literally throw off the Shatter completely for free. I have no reason not to. I'm worried about Kendagon, though, because if I Shatter, I need to get the Lavatos burn on it, or else I'll just lose the game. So, what comes down to this is a 60% chance odds are in my favor of a roll. So I need to get that roll or I will lose. I need to burn the Kendagon so it basically doesn't get any of its like good boosts. Chaotic Bolt comes out. Hopefully I do half. Okay, so what sucks here is I need to somehow heal with Magmatoad. Because I'm going to be at about this health. And pretty much any attack he has will be able to kill me. What I kind of have to do here is I have to feel like resting. This is my only point in the game where I could rest, and it's worth it. So I'm going to rest, because I can't be in the range for Volt Enchant Psycho Force to kill me, right? So he Chaotic Bolts. Yeah, see, at that point, I'd be weak to the Swapdar and the Kendagon coming in, so I need to heal up to max health, or I will lose the game. So, going to heal up there is good. Now, at this point, we're in the mid part of the game. We're in the mid part of the game where I can very easily win if all goes according to plan. I mean, we were pretty much in the mid game whenever the Gomut died. So, I think once one of each of your things dies, you're in mid game, or like 3 of the other opponent's things dies, you're in the mid game. So, we are now in the middle point in the game where we need to get predictions correctly. We need to predict correctly. Right now, I don't have to predict correctly because he can't hit me because he does not have Rainmaker Climate Shot up, right? So, they go for the Rainmaker. Now, this is where research is going to come in handy. Let's go to the Doodle World Wiki and let's go check on Kendagon. Kendagon. If I go check on Kendagon and I can check what moves it gets. It has Climate Shot, right? Okay, I know this does not have Climate Shot. I know that does not have Climate Shot, but I'm going to go check just to be sure. Swap tar. And if I go check swap tar, it does not have it. So I can lava toss completely for free. Almost no issues, right? Almost no issues. It's also odd that he's using... I guess I understand the rain on this team. I guess I understand it. I guess he should use Rainmaker Volt Enchant in this instance. Dark Slash going to do almost nothing to me. Okay. Now, as you can see, Magmatoad is able to do a lot of very, very good damage. Now, what we're going to do in this next part of the battle is go into Owl. So now we're in the end game. We're in the very late parts of the game where, at this point, I basically won the battle, right? I can't possibly lose unless I honestly lose. So, let's see. So they go for a Protect, actually, which is very interesting to use on Kendagon. What I can do now is I can totally for free go for my Foreign Substance, which will immediately put this thing on a timer. Putting Kendagon on a timer is really good for me. And mine's drained, and I take less damage because of Guardian. As you can see, I'm taking like 3 damage. It is so, so nice. Owl is so nice in this instance. Now, as you can see, I also undersped the Kendagon. So, what I can do is actually hit and run. And once I hit and run, I get to go into Springling. Then I can Leaf Blade just for some huge damage, right? Let me hit and run. And I will be slower than it. Actually, they're going to let me get free chip on it, which I do need the chip on this Kendagon. So I will take it. So they're clearly just trying to get their sugar coating back up, but thanks to the disease, we're keeping them from getting sugar coating. So as long as we keep this up, we're going to keep them from getting sugar coating, and we basically are going to win. They're stalling for time, and it's basically over. They can't really do anything to win the game. As I get an entirely free hit and run, I go into Springling. And my Leaf Blade, at this range, will always take Kendagon out. I'm pretty sure if I have the damage calc in my head right. Usually I think I would do like 70%. So, it doesn't really matter what they do. I can always click the move. Totally for free. And that will always end off the game. And that is kind of how this team is supposed to function. We did not fight any toxic types or Zapoeras, right? And in that instance, you can see how well the team actually performed. So you need to know also how important statuses are. As you can see, when I poisoned or diseased the Kendagon, it was able to prevent its ability sugar coating from activating. With sugar coating, halves the amount of damage you take if you're at full health, which is super good. And thanks to the disease from Owl, I was able to prevent it from getting that benefit. So thanks to one status, I was able to stop it. And thanks to, like, as you can see, the team also functioned really well doing damage without Springling. But since the team is based around Springling, Springling was able to win the game, which I'm very happy about. But yeah, I get this was a pretty long guide, but it was quite a lot of tips you guys should have known. And also with your lead, you should probably always lead off with a pivoter. I think you should always lead off with a pivoter, which is why I think electric type leads are very common. Like things like Volt Enchant is a really good anti-lead because you can just shockwave the air types and Psycho Force Scorporuli to, you know, it's really strong. And yeah, hopefully you guys did enjoy. And if you did, leave a like and star down below. I get this was a very long guide, but hopefully you guys now know a bit more on how to PvP in Doodle World. And I'll see everyone on the next one. Bye-bye!